Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everyone.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer insights and ideas for how emerging small and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can establish and grow their business.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean all aspects involved in establishing and growing brands across channels and platforms. On our show, we bring on guests that are brand founders, leaders, investors, as well as all kinds of suppliers to these emerging brands that are subject matter experts to share their unique insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please follow the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. Let's get to today's episode. Today's show is sponsored by Retail and Response. You've heard it a million times on this podcast. It's not about getting your product on the retail shelf. It's about moving product off the shelf and hitting the retailer's sales velocity hurdles fast. Otherwise, they're going to begin the discontinuation process. Trust me. A slow sales start can be fatal to your brand. You need consumers coming in seeking your brand. You know, the one they heard about on radio or saw on TV. If you think radio or TV advertising is too expensive, you need to speak with our friends at Retail and Response. With over 30 years helping drive hundreds of millions of dollars of sales for their clients, Retail and Response can get your brand on radio and TV for pennies on the dollar. Check them out at retailandresponse.com. That's retailandresponse.com.
So Bruce, tell us about our newest sponsor.
Glad to, Tracy. Tired of getting crushed by chargebacks each time your brand sells product? From dealing with hundreds of forms that all look different to fighting tooth and nail to get repays, managing deductions is tough work. And you're almost certainly leaving money on the table. Fortunately, there's a solution. Floret was built to help brands like yours. With Floret's software platform, you can automate your deductions workflow, get insight into your trade spend, and even have your deductions disputed for you. Whether you're a scrappy young brand trying to break into retail or an established supplier looking to get sharper on trade, Floret will put money back in your pocket. We've saved brands hundreds of thousands of dollars this year alone. Visit www.tryfloret.com to book a demo and learn more. That's www.tryfloret.com.
Again, we encourage you to subscribe to our iTunes or Spotify channel at Road, 2 Retail.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of The Road to Retail. We're really glad that you've chosen to join us. And look who's here. It's Tracy Priest. Tracy, how are you?
Always decided to show up today because, Bruce, we have a fantastic episode, a good friend, longtime friend of the CPG industry. So very excited about today's episode.
Well, why don't you just tell us who's here rather than tease us with that?
Absolutely. So we've got Greg Vetter, and he is the founder of Tessemae's Dressing. And I had the opportunity many years ago, Greg, to work with you and your family on the launch of the dressing brand, and just have fond memories of selling things to retailers. So anyway, great to have you on the show today. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Greg Vetter, founded Tessemae in 2009. Since wrote a book, started a brand accelerator, launched a produce business, launched a ready-to-drink vodka business, surprisingly have a Porta John business. and everything in between. So it's been a wild 16, 17 years, and happy to be here.
That's
Well,
awesome.
well, well, Greg, when are you going to actually do something? Geez,
Yeah.
that's a pretty full plate. So let's see here. I'm sure there's a bad joke, but food to porta potties, that about covers it.
We're
Okay.
vertically integrated.
Thanks for joining us today, folks. Hey, so Greg, thank you so much for coming on. With our audience of largely small, emerging challenger brands, you were there at one point, and maybe you are right now with some of your other ventures. When it comes to salad dressings, when you go to the store, there's not a shortage of potential options there. What gap did you see that let you and your, as Tracy said, your brother, that you guys thought, man, even though it's crowded, we see something here. So what did you guys see?
Yeah, I mean, we were actually shockingly the first clean salad dressing, and we were kind of 3 years before the clean eating movement, and we were kind of very, very early in the organic movement. I was at the time convincing retailers that organic was not a trend, and nobody was believing me outside of Whole Foods. So it was kind of the first clean, great tasting salad dressing on the market. And then it was our job to scream that from the rooftops.
So Greg, one other thing here. Um, we just attended the Founders Innovation Day in New York, where lots of emerging brands come. And one of the comments that many of the leading retailers made from the stage giving counsel was, hey, some of you guys that have had some success locally or at your farmer's market, you got to do some more research to understand your consumer and is your packaging sharp. Did you guys do any of that, or did you just kind of go for it and figure it out on the fly?
We went for it and figured it out on the fly. I think the key for what we had was that it tasted great. I
Mhm.
think everybody overthinks everything else. Our packaging in the beginning was trash. We hired a marketing group kind of 3 years in, and he joked, it has folksy charm. And he goes, and that's just a really polite way of saying it's horrible. Uh, but what we realized was anybody that tried it, they bought it. So we built our entire business around demoing because we realized we didn't have a brand. It was expensive. Um, Nobody knew who we were. It looked really weird on the shelf because at the time we used olive oil and it was in the refrigerated set, so it solidified. So it looked horrible. But then when people tried it, they were like, this is the greatest tasting thing I've ever had in my life. So with that in mind, we go, okay, well, we got to get more people to try it. And what that did is it bought us time to figure out all the rest. And I think a lot of times with brands, there's so much stuff to do, right? Because in reality, if I had done any research on salad dressing, I never would have gotten into it. I mean, it's low velocity. We were in refrigerated logistics. We had a glass bottle, which is heavy. You can't sell refrigerated glass at the time on Amazon. So that limited what we could do. I mean, the list was so long. But the beauty of all of that is it forced us to really kind of get a deeper understanding of our consumer, and our consumer loved it. So regardless of everything else, regardless of someone saying your packaging sucks, it's too expensive, it's too this, it's too that, the consumer was buying it. And so I think at its most fundamental level, the product must be superior. And then that will allow you to figure out the rest.
That's a great advice. One of my favorite Greg Vetter stories is when you started to get into this, and it's of course your mom's recipe. You guys Googled how to start a CPG brand. True or
We
false?
Yes, we Googled basically everything for the first couple of years, and we did not have Chat GPT or any of that. That would have actually
Right.
made everything unbelievably easier.
Yeah.
But when I was filling out the paperwork to get into Whole Foods as a test for the grand opening, they gave me 200 pages of paperwork to fill out on how to be a food manufacturer or to be a food manufacturer. And I'm just like, Google, what is a HACCP plan? What is a HACCP plan for salad dressing?
So safe
So
to say, Greg, you would not recommend that approach today to any brand founder.
no, I would not. And
No, but
yeah, it
but
was aggressive.
no, but kidding aside, before we move on with Tracy's next topic, what Greg said, folks, is super important. Part of what makes the magic of founders, as Tracy and I talk to more and more each week, if you study too much, you probably won't do anything.
Yeah.
But if you don't study at all, you may regret it, because when you do finally stop and study a little bit, you're like, damn, that wasn't that hard. I maybe should have checked that first. But
Yes.
it's why people innovate, right? Because who would have ever thought, you need like a ninth set of athletic clothing, but some of the new brands right now are the ones that are winning.
It's very true. It's
Yep.
very true.
Tracy?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about differentiation, and I know you totally agree that it's critical, especially today. And you talked about your point of difference of Tessemae's tasted great and healthy, but tell it maybe a little bit about how you said something that really caught my attention. We were screaming that from the mountaintops to these retailers that didn't really get it at that point. So how did you do that? Did you use data? How did you convince these retailers outside of, Whole Foods? And I remember attending, a Publix meeting with you, and they were
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah.
Refrigerated? What? Organic? What? Healthy? No sugar? What?
Yeah.
So, I was there during those years, but tell maybe our audience, like, how do you scream your message from the mountaintop to get retailers' attention these days?
The real thing was just we burned the ships. I mean, we fully committed in every single one of those meetings to get the deal or never get into that retailer ever again.
All or
We were
nothing.
right. We were not polite about
Mm-mm.
trying to convince these people that clean eating and organic and great tasting was not a trend. They were wrong. We were right. We were willing to do anything to get a shot. We were willing to buy everything back. We were willing to do an entire demo program. I mean, we were literally willing to do anything outside of giving it to them for free. We tried to maintain our kind of price integrity and in the premium nature of the product. But people just did not believe us. And so our goal in every meeting was just basically countering every no with a solution for yes, or
Mm-hmm.
at a minimum, giving us a chance. And if it didn't work, we wanted to eliminate all of the risk to the retailer. We'll buy it back. We'll do this. We'll do that. We don't care. Just we promise you that it will work. And when the retailer partnered with us and they allowed us to do the demo platform that we had developed across basically every kind of region across the country, it always thrived every single time, because the dressing, and this really kind of hits home, or it needs to hit home with people. If someone tries it, they need to love it and they need to want to buy it again.
Yeah.
And so you can have the most beautiful packaging on the world. You can have every health claim imaginable, which I have seen every single one come and go. If it does not taste great, nobody cares.
Yeah.
And so we really were in there fighting the fight. And thankfully, we were able to get our shot, and then we delivered, which allowed us to go from, one store to every store in the country.
Yeah. I love what you said. You burned the boats, and brother, you did. There's no no doubt about that. And see, back then, a healthy food, any kind of healthy food, everybody thought, oh, it just tastes like crap,
Yeah.
right? It was
Yep.
just terrible. And back then, a lot of that was true.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So, Greg, when we had our pre-call to discuss you coming on the show, you mentioned something really interesting that was a challenge. Can you speak a little bit about how tough it was? You're telling the story how tough it was to get retailers on board. How hard was it to find people that could meet the manufacturing specifications that you guys were looking for to ride this clean train?
Well, nobody could. And it was interesting because we weren't, in theory, we weren't doing any rocket science. And so we would go to co-packers, we would explain what we were trying to do. They would try and change the recipes and the formulas. We realized that all that mattered was the taste. And so then we ended up starting our own manufacturing plants to deliver on the quality. And then eventually, as everybody realized that clean eating and organic was not a trend, we were able to basically convince a co-packer to allow us to take over their plant and teach them so that we then had two manufacturing plants making our product. But in the early days, trying to convince somebody to use fresh garlic was like the hardest thing in the world. And we ended up basically rewriting the process, authorities, rules, and regulations on fresh garlic just from being stubborn because there was a botulism scare in 1978. And so everybody changed the rules around fresh garlic in consumer packaged goods. And I just wasn't going for it. I'm like, no, all of Europe uses garlic. This is insane. We're going to do it. What are your thoughts on, this, that, and the other? And we ended up developing kind of a safe way to use fresh garlic in mass salad dressing production. But when you think about trying to deliver the highest possible quality product to a person and how hard that actually is in reality, it really does kind of, again, going back to like doing too much research. If I had done any research on fresh garlic in mass production of salad dressing, the first thing that would have come up is, yeah, you can't do it. You can use dehydrated garlic, you can use garlic powder, you can use, natural flavor that tastes like garlic, you can use a garlic oil. But in reality, everybody here knows when you use fresh garlic in your cooking, it tastes way different
oh yeah,
than a garlic powder. So really taking the risk of developing our own manufacturing processes and our facility to then buy us time for the rest of the industry to be open to looking at alternative manufacturing processes was critical for us to be able to stay differentiated over time.
yeah. You were definitely a pioneer, no doubt, no doubt.
So, Greg, let's talk a little bit about some of the awards and recognition that you and your team were able to earn as you started to get some payoff from all the hard work of blazing this trail and kind of creating a subcategory within salad dressing. So, tell us about some of these awards. Those first ones, man, they had to have felt great that someone on the outside, aside from people buying it and saying, damn, this is tasty, we're like, all
Yeah.
right, look what these guys are doing.
Yeah, I mean, Inc. magazine's Entrepreneur of the Year was pretty great. And then when we redesigned our packaging and then getting the Nielsen Design Impact Award as kind of the most impactful packaging shift was really cool. And then probably one of the biggest ones, but probably not big to anybody else except for us, was we got Sam's Club Supplier of the Year. And when you think about how hard we had been working and for how long, to be able to have those kind of very spaced out pillars of recognition, it was nice. As a founder and an entrepreneur, you think you should be getting way more than that. And that's just that's any athlete, that's anybody. You think you should get every award that has ever come out, but it was good to be recognized. And really, it was better for my team because it showed them that all of their effort was being recognized. And I think that that was really important for them.
That's awesome.
There's no doubt.
All right. So let's talk about in the beginning, Tessemae decides, yeah, we're going to retail, and no spoiler alert, you went after Whole Foods first. So tell us first why you decided to go to Whole Foods, and you have to tell my favorite story about how you got into the very first Whole Foods.
Well, I wanted to go big, right? A lot of times you hear people, get into some farmers markets, get into some local shops. Getting that yes takes the same amount of effort as getting a yes somewhere else. And I don't think people realize that.
Right.
And so I just started cold calling the local Annapolis Whole Foods. And I finally got a guy on the phone that said, yeah, bring me a sample today. Now, we weren't a business yet. We didn't have a bottle. We didn't have a name. We were nothing. So I had my mom make the greatest batch of salad dressing that had ever been made. And she's telling me this isn't going to work. She goes, what are you going to bring it in? And I'm like, give me this little Tupperware container with a red lid, crunchy romaine lettuce, dressing on top. I'm going to take this dude to salad. And she's like, you're going to do what? And I'm like, I'll let you know how the meeting goes. So I walk in, they call the guy over the loudspeaker. He walks up and he's like, show me your product, show me your packaging. And I hand him this little Tupperware container with a red lid. And he's looking at me like I'm on drugs. So he opens it. He takes this piece of wet lettuce out, licks the dressing off, and he looks at me shocked. And he goes, that's the greatest salad dressing I've ever had. And he goes, you need to call the regional office. I'm like, well, why don't you call the regional office for me? I'll show up to that meeting, which I did. I did the same thing to the regional office. And they handed me 200 pages of paperwork. And they said, hey, we'll buy 4 cases from you. That's all we're committing to for the grand opening of the new store, which was May 5th, 2009. And so then I spent the next couple months Googling my way into becoming a food manufacturer, coming up with a name, finding a bottle, doing the food science, doing all of this craziness. And that is how we got our start.
Craziest story.
So using my advanced math, that's 50 pages of paperwork per case. That would have been a tough way to make a living long term. So that's unbelievable, and I can only imagine the look on the guy's face when this young man shows up with a Tupperware salad and probably forgot the fork, Greg. But luckily,
I did not have a fork. I did not have a fork.
Yeah, but the best part of the story is the happy ending is they bought 4 cases and they sold all of it in one weekend.
Right? Yeah, well, so we got in for the grand opening. I think it was a Wednesday, maybe a Tuesday. And this crowd's forming. I think the opening was at 10 a.m. And I have a demo set up. I'm like so new. I got a apron embroidered and I've got recipe cards and I got little samples of lettuce with dressing on it with a toothpick in there. And the doors open. And people are they're running in. And I'm kind of the first person they see in produce. And I'm just saying, hey, would you like a sample? It's my mom's salad dressing recipe. Me and my brothers are bringing it to the world. And the next thing I know, it's all gone. And so I go to the director of the East Coast and I'm like, hey man, I'm out of that dressing. And he goes, there's more in the back. And I'm like, no, it's all gone. He goes, you sold 4 cases of salad dressing in 30 minutes. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, go get more. I go, you told me that was for the month. I got to go make more. And so we ended up selling 650 bottles in 5 days of one
Crazy.
flavor in one store. And that really set the stage for us to basically grow as aggressively as we could grow.
Yeah.
That would have been a hell of a velocity metric.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was unbelievable. They
So,
did a they did a report on the top items of produce at the end of the week for the grand opening, and we were in like the top 5. It was like lettuce, bananas, Tessemae, and all these regional presidents and VPs are there. They go, "What the hell is Tessemae?"
oh my gosh. So Greg, as you guys started to get traction, a couple years down the road, let's say, how did you think about managing the different channels you were now getting into? Your own website. You've had a presence on Amazon for a long time. You mentioned, glass and Amazon and refrigerated. You obviously figured that out.
Yeah.
And then moving into brick and mortar. So how did you guys decide to manage these channels from both the price point and maybe a SKU mix
Yeah.
standpoint? This is a challenge all brands hit, whether you're Liquid Tide or Tessemae's in the first year.
Yeah, so we stayed in the natural channel for a couple years. And then what happened was all of the mainstream retailers started to realize that organic was not going away. And the first one that started really aggressively pursuing that was Safeway because they were trying to sell to Albertsons. And so we were in the NorCal region of Whole Foods and doing really well. And basically, what Safeway was doing was they were kind of taking the top items in every category from Whole Foods and they were calling them and they were bringing them into Safeway to basically show that they were, a cutting edge retailer that had their, ear to the ground on what was up and coming. So they reached out to us. Initially, we said, no, we're not interested. And then we eventually went in. And so initially, we went in at basically the same price point as Whole Foods because again, they didn't really understand who we were. They were cool with premium, but we were probably overpriced for their consumer. So we started then looking at okay, let's classify the Safeways and the Krogers and the Harris Teeters and the Albertsons as a different category. The Publix is, and let's give a slight kind of decrease in price based on volume because they were, 5 times the stores.
Right.
And we tested it in the beginning to see where our kind of price point flexibility was for that consumer. And so we found a sweet spot for that consumer, which was basically right under $5. So it was like $4.99 was the sweet spot for the conventional grocery shopper. And then we had volume commitments and we said, listen, we can give you this price point if you buy this much dressing from us. And that's what we did for, the rest of the conventional grocery store chain or chains. And it ended up working well. Initially, I think we went in at $5.49. It went well. It didn't go as great as it could. Once we really started getting velocity, we had money to pay for data. That really helped us in terms of how we thought about SKUs and flavors and what was doing well and what wasn't doing well. So we tested it a bunch in the beginning from $5.99 to $5.49. And really, we saw the greatest shelf sale return at that $4.99 spot.
Great.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Excellent. Tracy?
Yep. So talk to us about the marketing vehicles that you guys used to really drive awareness and trial. You mentioned demos, but what other vehicles did you use, and then how did you evaluate those? Because a lot of those things, social media wasn't big really back then. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So yeah, I mean, shockingly, we were kind of like in the cutting edge of social media. I mean, if you want to feel old, say that. It's like, oh yeah, people were just setting up business Facebook pages, and people are like, "What's up,
Right.
you?" So we were doing that, and then really the demo platform was really important. And then the big wave that we saw the most impact was like the rise of the quote unquote mommy blogger. So we really saw this massive uptick of women bloggers focused on clean eating and food for their families. And so that was also during the rise of Instagram. And so we really started following and asking all of our consumers, like, who's your favorite blogger? Why? And so we started doing kind of low level partnerships with these people. And it did not cost us a lot of money because they were so excited to be partnering with a national brand. We were giving their consumers discounts, and the discounts were specific to buying our product online. We did all of our own drop shipping out of our warehouse. So we really tracked the impact of a blogger when they did a sponsored recipe and what the overall impact was from that region. And then that's how we tracked kind of the effectiveness of those campaigns. So we really didn't do a lot of national TV or radio until um, kind of the summer of 2019. We did our first national TV, radio, and digital campaign, which went unbelievably well. But then, COVID came, and we
Yeah.
might as well lit that money on fire because all of the amazing results we had that we thought we could leverage into more SKUs into retail, more retailers, other innovation products. I mean, people were focused on Clorox wipes and eggs.
And toilet paper. Don't
And
forget
toilet
toilet paper.
paper. So, yeah.
That's great. I love it.
Yeah. So Greg, along the way, many brands have to figure out how to fund either their startup or their growth. And with the success you had, what advice would you give to emerging brands when they start to think about raising money? What did you learn during your process? So that's one thing to think about. And then the follow-up would be when you and your team decided, yeah, we've got something here, but we need some fuel to grow. What kind of profile were you looking for in those initial investors?
Well, in the beginning, no one believed it could ever scale or work because, again, we were 3 years ahead of the organic clean eating trend. So, to take advantage of the moment we knew was coming, we were, we were just talking to high net worth friends and family and individuals, friends of friends, and we're telling them like we got a national deal with Whole Foods. Like, come on, I need 200 grand or I need 100 grand or I'll take 10. And so we ended up having a cap table of 52 different people.
Oof.
And yeah, it was a lot. And the interesting part was we only went out for money when we had something massive coming. So it was a very straightforward decision. It was they got a national deal with Safeway. Yes or no, are you in? They got a national deal with Kroger. Yes or no, are you in? We're innovating into a shelf stable line in all of the retail tailors. Are you in? And so there were some benefits to that because the power was dispersed among 52 people. But at the same time, it was really chaotic. And, when you're talking to young brands who want to raise money, there's a million different ways to skin a cat. And I would tell you, look at alternative funding methods first if you truly believe in what you're doing, right? Like refi your house, take a home equity line of credit out on it, take out credit cards, look at state grant options, do that first. Because when it's time to get investors, you should really be prepared for what they're looking for from this deal, because they're looking for a massive return in a very specific amount of time.
Right.
And I'm not sure entrepreneurs really understand that, because usually the entrepreneurs are not the finance wizards, because if they were, they're not getting into salad dressing because they've done the
Imagine
research, and that is stupid to do.
that.
So, Greg, one quick follow up here. So once you took on investors that might have been outside, your circle of people you knew personally or friends and family, when you take that money, your point about, hey, they're giving you money and they want it back and a return in a certain amount of time, what did you learn or what counsel could you give in terms of like, hey, man, your life's going to change a little bit. You're going to have reporting. People might call you. I mean, how did you handle what counsel would you give on you're going to have reporting, you're going to have to put up some walls, or else all you'll be doing is taking phone calls and responding to crazy emails all day?
Yeah. The first key is grow. Because if you're growing and you're putting the money to growth and there's positive headlines to talk about, that is a very, very good thing. The other is always have solutions to your problems already underway. Nobody wants to hear that there are problems and you don't have the solution. They
That's
want
good advice.
updates. They're okay with updates. They're okay with the reality of the world, but you better have some solutions already underway and giving progress reports on solving all of those problems. So I think our board was good. We had a good board structure. They all represented the investor base well. We were always growing exponentially. We were always doing big things. And so prior to COVID and then the supply chain crisis, there was always positive stuff to talk about. Now there was also negative stuff, right? I mean, there's manufacturing issues and there's marketing issues and there's retailer issues and there's a million different problems that come up in businesses everybody understands.
Yeah.
But having solutions underway was critical to maintaining my leadership position.
Yeah. That's great advice.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say that. I was speaking with a CEO of a small company this morning, and he comes from a intense finance investing background. And he said, Bruce, man, he goes, there's a fire every day in
Yeah.
CPG. I said, yeah. So remember that if you ever go back to the investing side of the table.
Yeah. And I would say that was always frustrating because you would have these meetings, whether you're raising money or you're not, and everybody basically had the same background. They went to the same schools, they did the same internships, they went to the same banks. So they would come in and they would ask the same questions. And the questions are good from a surface level intellectual perspective, but they were very off base for the reality of what it takes to manufacture something.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so you always felt like you were having to convince someone of a reality that they were never going to really be able to understand. And not until, you get somebody from finance that then goes into CPG, do they ever truly get, oh, your janitorial team, which you have to have in manufacturing, you got to clean everything every 4 hours or something, was on heroin and poured bleach on the floor scrubber's battery and created a mustard bomb, and you had to evacuate the facility, and that's why productivity was down that week. Like that happened. And
Yeah.
so you can
Oh,
tell someone that,
Yeah.
but they kind of look at you like, really, man?
Is that the best
Someone
you
was
can do?
on heroin and so
so while we're sharing more stories, one of the best ones I had to sit in on was we were representing a woman's health product, and the product had an absolute blowout month. And the investors are like, that was great. Why did we do so well? Well, that account was having Women's Health Month, and there were lots of displays and end caps and promotional activity. Well, can we do it next month? No, it's Women's Health Month, not Women's Health Quarter or year. And then it's like, so you're saying you can't get it done? Count to 10, Bruce.
right.
No, it's Women's Health Month. We'll do it next year at the same time. So to your point, man, people just think everything's an equation, and
Yeah.
It's
there's
not.
always crazy stuff.
It's not. So, Greg, and a fellow entrepreneur calls you and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a CPG brand. What's your what's your best advice to them? What's your number one thing you tell them?"
Go prove yourself wrong.
Hmm.
I say take your product without emotion and go ask strangers what they think.
Not your family, not your
Not
friends.
your family, not your friends. Don't give anybody an update on what it is, on what you're doing, on your passion for the space. Walk up to strangers and go, "Hey, I've got, what do you think of this thing?"
Yeah.
And just see what their reaction is. Go put it on a shelf and ask people walking down the aisle, what do you think of this thing? Prove yourself wrong. And if you can't prove yourself wrong, then you're closer to being right.
Yeah.
And in that process, that will give you a lot of the information you need to be successful with CPG in retail, because that is what is happening in the world. You got a busy mom with 3 kids, 4 kids, whatever. They're screaming, they're in an aisle, and you want to be this little thing on the shelf and you want her to choose it. Is she going to choose it? And are there barriers to purchase for her or him or whatever the product is? And so that's usually my advice, which is like, go get random people to give you their feedback and don't give them any insight into what it is, what's going on, who designed the packaging. Just listen. And because that's what the consumer is going to be doing in a grocery store.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's great counsel. And Tracy and I tell the audience all the time, just because you had some success at the farmer's market where, you're interacting with a person who might stand there and listen to your story for 3 minutes. The example you just gave of a mom or dad with a couple of kids, and they're trying to buzz through their list and get out of there before Johnny punches Mary in the head again. It's a whole different ball game. All right, Greg, we're heading toward the finish line here. So, question: who's had the greatest influence on your career, And what did this person do for you that's really stuck with you over time? You can either name names or just give examples, but it's always interesting to hear. Maybe it was a piece of harsh criticism early, and you're like, "Damn, that was harsh," and years later, you're like, "That was actually really well timed."
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't really have a lot of mentors. I was kind of always looking for those. Um, but one book that changed my life was just Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And so when I figured out and learned how to set goals and believe in achieving the goals come hell or high water, that completely changed the trajectory of what I thought was possible in my life. And so there's obviously been a million people that have been in there kind of momentarily and have given me great advice. Some were horrible people that I would consider enemies. Some have been magnificent people that I think are true, stand-up pillars of society and character. But when I really kind of think back of like, how was I able to take the risk that I was able to take and move forward through the darkness of it all without any experience or any money? I just used to listen to Napoleon Hill's rare recordings of his actual speeches when I drove, and that really helped me through it.
That's awesome. I love that. Great book. Great book. So we're rounding third and heading home here, Greg. So our fun question of the day. Tell us your favorite sports team, band, or brand and why you followed them.
Oh. um well, I'll have to go currently with my sons. I don't have any favorite sports teams.
Yeah.
I'm a supporter of whatever my kids want to go see and do. So my kids love the Buffalo Bills. So right now we're heavy into the NFL season supporting the Buffalo Bills, even though we have no ties to Buffalo whatsoever. And then I'm very excited to see if Indiana pulls this off in the
Yes.
college football playoffs. So those are the kind of two teams I'm keeping my eye on.
I love it. I'm sure your kids are Josh Allen fans.
Huge,
Yeah.
huge.
When you talk, Greg, about just belief, regardless of what other people might have been saying or thinking about your venture, I saw, I live in Central Virginia, so Frank Signetti, the IU coach, was right up the street here in at James Madison.
Yeah.
And in one year, they finally got Virginia Tech to play them, and they went into Blacksburg and smoked them.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're interviewing the coach after the game, and they're like, "Were you surprised?" And he's like, "I thought we beat them worse." And when they beat Ohio State to win the Big Ten, the person interviewing him goes, "Coach, could you ever imagine that you'd be standing here?" And this was Signetti's second season at IU. He looked at her and goes, "We're a year behind schedule." And I was like, I like this guy.
I also like him. He does a lot of Googling too.
Well, I like that. That was the all-time great press conference. I win a lot. Google me.
Google me.
Hey, Greg. So, how can folks get in touch with you, or follow you, or learn more about your current ventures? What's the best way to track Greg Vetter?
Yeah, I'm on social media. I have a website, gregoryvetter.com, and I'm always posting stuff on LinkedIn and social media, Instagram and TikTok and all that good stuff. And so, if somebody reaches out through my website or on social media, we usually get back to them pretty quickly. And that's how people can find me.
All right. Well, Greg,
you're not hard to
thank
find.
you. Yeah, thank you so much. All right, Tracy, the big finish.
Absolutely. Greg Vetter, you were awesome. Great advice for our small emerging brand audience. Love to reconnect with you and tell old war stories, because there's quite a few. We didn't even tell them all today. We just told some of it was a highlight reel today. So we really appreciate you coming on the show today. And so, audience, thanks for joining us. And look for this episode soon. And continue to follow us on Apple and Spotify podcast, LinkedIn, YouTube. We also have a website, www.roadtoretail.com. We post every Tuesday, and all of our episode links are always in our posts. So click on those and follow us. So we appreciate it. And thank you again, Greg.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck out there, folks.